Hello everyone. Okay, can you see me all right? Cecilia, have you got me? Yes, Max. Hi, how you doing? Okay, I should have had my camera off for that intro there because I can feel my cheeks burning. Right, okay, so for the next 50 minutes, we're going to be talking about advocacy and how to share your story and how to get the word out there about OCD. What I won't really be talking about today is how to get more followers or how to promote your website or anything like that, because I know there's a load of absolutely amazing materials out there that will say exactly, that will teach you how to do that. I'm just going to change this a little bit. You don't need me to tell you how to do that, okay? But what I do want to talk about today is how to share your story, get it heard in whatever way is comfortable for you and whatever way you have room in your life to try and get the story out about what has easily got to be the most misunderstood and misinterpreted mental health condition on the planet. I mean, there's not many other people I think who have to deal with a condition and listen to quite a lot of people talking about it in the wrong way. So it is really important that we share our story. Just to keep me on track, so I don't wander off and start talking about my new cat or something like that, which I'm very prone to do at the moment, I have done a little PowerPoint just to help me on my way. And I'm just setting up the screen share for that now. I will be talking over it. You don't need to, there it is. Can I make that big? I think that. Oh, there we go, that worked quite nicely. Right, okay, so here we go. This is part one of, I'm not sure if you can see me. I've had to just quickly change onto an iPad because of a few tech issues. If you can't, please don't worry, I'll try and make my voice super exciting and I will come back at the end. I can't see a question and answer box either, but if you have questions at the end, please let me know and I will do my best to answer them then. So, first of all, please don't panic. This picture is a new one from a blog that I'm writing to kind of back everything up that I'm going to be saying today. There's Olivia at the lectern with the world's media microphones faced towards her. You absolutely do not need to do that to share your story. And it has taken me many years to not see a lectern and run very quickly out of the exit. So you are absolutely not expected to do that. So in today's talk, we are going to talk about boundaries. Very, very important. What are our boundaries when we come to share our story? How can we protect ourselves? How can we make sure sharing our story is done in a safe way for both us and the people who are going to go on to read our story and look at our advocacy? We want to talk about as well, I want to talk about the pros and challenges as well. And I'm not saying cons, because there really, if you do it well, there aren't many cons, you know, to advocacy, but occasionally there are challenges that you might need to overcome. I'll be sharing some top tips. I've got a bit of further reading that we can have a look at the end, just a couple of blogs I've written to support this. And of course, then there will be this one with this artwork that is following. So if we're ready, let's get going. Okay, I'm going to try and force myself to slow down because I know me and I'll be done in 10 minutes. Let's go. So a brief introduction to my advocacy. I've spoken about perinatal OCD and my OCD journey so many times now. I don't want to spend too much time on it today because I just think you can find it elsewhere. Let's talk about other things. But very, very briefly, I've had OCD my whole life. It was a very, very, I wouldn't say difficult, it was challenging. I spent a lot of my childhood worried about harm coming to my family, and it was really difficult. It was really, really difficult. I used to spend a lot of time doing routines before bedtime. I know it used to take me about 3 or 4 hours to go to bed. I hated my parents going out. I was terrified that they just wouldn't come back. And I used to spend a lot of time kind of sitting on the front garden wall or staring out the window, just waiting and willing them to just pull up home from from work, sorry. So, you know, while other children might have been out and playing, you know, my brain was very busy with really horrible intrusive thoughts about harm coming to my loved ones. Didn't know it was OCD. And that kind of carried on in that way until I was 30. So it was annoying. I didn't get therapy, but it didn't stop me doing anything. I went out and I got my qualifications, I got my degree, I became a primary school teacher, and life was okay. I was probably drinking a little bit too much, which I now realise was self-medicating. I smoked like a trooper as well, which is another thing, thankfully, that's gone. But I was happy, but not at the same time, because I was aware that there was something not quite right. When I had my son in 2012, I started getting what I now know is intrusive thoughts about harming him. And again, I won't go into too much detail about these. I mean, I've spoken to Stuart Ralph 3 times now about it, so check out his podcast. I've also written it down for OCD Action in the past, but I started off getting intrusive thoughts about harm coming to my son, things that kind of made sense, like the cat might sit on him, or he might get hold of some chemicals and drink them, when he was 1 day old. And then it kind of got to the point where I was worried that someone would accidentally hurt him and drop him, and it came with all the normal intrusive thoughts and the compulsions, and it grew to the point where I think it realised that I was growing accustomed to the other, and it started making me think that I was having intrusive thoughts about hurting my son. And I also started experiencing intrusive urges, which is also a form of intrusive thought, but was horrendous, because I thought if intrusive thoughts are one thing, I can tell them that they are my thoughts. Intrusive urges and impulses felt like I had every intention of doing it, and it was a very, very painful time. A lot of my intrusive thoughts and my compulsions, or my compulsions in particular, were judging me, looking at me, seeing what kind of mother I was, and going through all the really horrible things I'd ever done in my life as a way of trying to look for evidence as to whether I would do the stuff or not. So whether you were looking at the obsession or the compulsion, it was an incredibly painful time. It took me about 18 months to get into therapy. I was very ill by that point. And I eventually went off, had CBT with ERP, 20 weeks of it, followed by another 20 weeks after a pretty huge setback. And I then kind of carried on with my life feeling much, much better with the help of medication. I spent probably about a year still wrestling with this idea that I was, just not a very nice person. OCD kind of has a way of digging in, and you're constantly full of these yeah buts, yeah buts, yeah buts. And so that is where the creation of Olivia, this little lady you can see in the pictures here, and actually this will show you a pretty good example of how we've kind of been evolving. So the Olivia picture, bottom right and top right, were the first ones ever made. And then we slowly kind of learned how to use the technology to create her. And actually, I'll just go back to this one for a minute. We are now using technology to create her, because every single one of these pictures took my husband Pete days, involving tracing paper and all sorts of madness. So that's part of the advocacy lesson, in that you have to constantly change things to make it manageable for you. So Olivia basically started off as being a way to help me separate my intrusive thoughts from me. And the reason I chose her to be this creature, I mean, she has like the physiological she has a look of something that can be quite easily terrified. If you look left, there's her in a particularly triggered state, and it's about showing compassion and love. And yeah, the rest of her, I think, is her just normal before she's kicked off about something or other. So it was really important for me to have Olivia to help me separate what I was doing with my intrusive thoughts. And I didn't want to imagine a horrible bully. I wanted, being a mother, being a primary school teacher, I wanted to try and imagine something that was vulnerable, something that needed love, something that maybe hadn't learnt the skills needed yet to deal with the things that they were experiencing. And through practicing with Olivia, just I know I wasn't really standing next to her in these pictures, just using it as a kind of mental strategy was really, really helpful for me. And those the way I could imagine myself talking to her was just so, it just helped me, it modelled to me how to talk to myself. You know, we always say, oh, I'm so horrible to myself, but I'm lovely to other people. She helped me to learn how to automatically start to be more encouraging and positive and kind. And that is what I then was able to translate to myself. So that was probably way longer than I intended to be. So let's brush through this bit. So basically, I wrote down my first ever post talking about Olivia. I'd never had a go at writing before, apart from at uni and stuff like that. Pete animated it and I felt so much better. And I thought, well, hang on, if it's helped me, then maybe it'll help other people. And that was what the big hope was. So we slowly started to bring it out, and it grew and it grew and it grew. And we started to hear from people internationally. We started to hear from people with children who said what a helpful strategy it was. And so immediately, I mean, I was someone who had the most ridiculous self-esteem. I didn't think anyone would want to read it. I was expecting people to, you know, email me and tell me how awful it was, you know, negative thinking alive and well. And it got really good feedback, and it's basically just grown from there. So every now and again, I go off and I talk a lot about perinatal OCD, and it's never very long until I come back to Taming Olivia. I am currently the executive producer of a film called Waving, a short film, 9 minutes long, which has, the lead is going to be quite a big UK household named actor. I can't, you know, it's a shame, but I can't share that just yet, hopefully very soon. But it's actually going to show the reality of intrusive thoughts in OCD and male mental health. And I just think that's absolutely incredible. So what started off as my little blog has kind of led to podcasts, the press. I specialised in the press. I quite enjoyed doing that. But I appreciate that is not for everyone. So, you know, that's kind of where my journey went. I've literally done everything to do with OCD now, whether it's writing journals, speaking at conferences, doing this, you know, it just, what has come from this Taming Olivia blog is just absolutely incredible, really. So let's have a little think about you. So the pros and the challenges of advocacy. Let me just check I've not skipped a page. There we go. So the pros. You get to help lots and lots of people. OCD is massively misunderstood, and it feels great to know that you are stopping other people going through what you have. You know, our journeys were painful and they were hard, and we get to rewrite that now, so that, all right, that was the beginning, and the next step is going to be me turning that into a positive, of being able to turn that pain into purpose, and actually really reach those people who are probably feeling pretty lost right now. One of the things I love about it the most is that it kind of helps me to keep up with my therapy skills, because I talk about them. So it kind of helps me to remember that actually I'm quite prone to a bit of black and white thinking, or to bring in my, you know, evidence A and B theories, you know, and all these kind of different things that I learned in therapy. Because I'm writing about them and I'm thinking about what I'm writing, it really helps me to work on that, and to kind of keep those skills fine-tuned, because I'm not sure I would do that without it. It also, I mean, you can see that it helps you develop new skills. Honestly, if you had told me 4 years ago that one day I would be doing this, I would not have been okay. I would not have been okay. I would have been in pieces. There is quite a famous story that I tell that's doing the rounds of the first time I ever spoke on the radio. And I was working with someone who had to send me sheep pictures, funny sheep pictures, because I was so nervous beforehand. I was actually being sick, and I think they thought that I was just going to leg it. So, you know, it's like I approached today, yes, with nervousness. I wanted to do a good job, but much calmer. So it's helped me develop all sorts of skills, both in terms of, you know, my life experience, in terms of talking, in terms of, you know, trying to face uncertainty. Things like this bring on a load of uncertainty. So your writing skills, your painting skills, your communication skills, you know, anything you need to work on, you have the opportunity to through advocacy and sharing your story. New experiences and opportunities. I mean, for goodness sake, 3 weeks ago, I was on a film set doing a scout. At some point I will write what that experience was like, because it was not easy. It was an abandoned RAF like kind of airplane hangar or something, and it hadn't been treated particularly well, let's just say that, and I saw all manner of things that day and had to do deliberate exposures. Had you ever told me that I would get to go and do something like that, you know, and to talk to people I've been talking to recently, or to appear on BBC News, I wouldn't ever have believed it. So the things it leads onto are absolutely incredible. You will meet some of the best people you ever meet. I wouldn't even know where to start talking about the amazing people that I've met through my advocacy journey. You know, they're your real tribe. They understand what you've been through. They understand why you want to share your story and why you want to help. And spot the deliberate mistake, not really. Hiding behind that team and Olivia is, it's fun. It is fun. It is fun. You get to meet all sorts of amazing people. You get to do all sorts of amazing things that you never thought you'd do before. And so let's go on to the challenges. It can be, I want to focus the rest of this PowerPoint mainly on, like, you know, kind of try and overcome these challenges, because that's where we really need to be thinking, really. So it can be really time consuming. I mean, it's very easy to be pulled into social media, and we know how long that takes. It can also have an impact on your well-being. You know, if you share your story, particularly if you make your website or your social media clear, depending on how you choose to share your story, and we'll talk about that again in a minute, it can really impact on your well-being. You know, you can have people messaging you who are very poorly. And also, if you don't keep your boundaries in place, that could really affect you as well. Now, I know most, you know, it's not unusual for voluntary work to be unpaid, but, you know, we do work hard, most of us. And even just in terms of sharing your story, it is a shame that it will go without payment. You know, I think, you know, advocates do an amazing job. People who choose to share their story to stop others suffering and to empower themselves through their journey, you know, is incredible, and they do deserve financial reward for that. And sadly, as a society, we just either don't have that funding, or we don't reward that enough. So you would need to work alongside it elsewhere. I mean, we have gone without holidays. I've used a lot of my inheritance. So it's just about trying to make sure that, you know, you kind of keep a balance there. I've spoken about social media being both a blessing and a curse. And it's really easy to take on too much and become overwhelmed. You know, you're desperate to help, particularly at the beginning. You go rushing in, and, you know, it can very quickly become something that you find yourself almost wanting to do 24 hours a day. You know, you helped someone, you get a wonderful letter saying, thank you, I've read your story. I just want to let you know that it's really changed everything. That's incredible. And it's very hard then to start saying no to certain things. Okay, so we're going to go on and have a little chat about you becoming an advocate, and about you sharing your story, and about the type of things that you should be thinking about, the kind of questions you should be asking yourself. So let's have a think about what your motivation is. Okay, so why is it you want to do it? Did something happen in your journey? You know, was there a misunderstanding or misinformation about OCD from your professionals? There certainly was from me, which is one of the reasons why I focused a lot of my work towards the kind of world of midwifery, health visitors, people who are around mums when they've just had their babies, and dads as well, because perinatal OCD is you know, a big thing as well that's not often recognised. So where does your passion lie? What is it that you want people to know about? Okay, why is it that you want to do it? Why do you want to share your story? Is it to empower you? Is it to empower other people? Is it to educate those that are misinformed? Is it to stop other people going through what you have? So have a little think about where your motivation lies. And also make sure that you don't allow that motivation to then cloud your judgment. As I say, it's really easy to become totally over-passionate with this. I mean, not that you can really, but if it's at your own expense, it is. And I do have to rein it in sometimes, because, you know, the fight spirit is very hard when you've been through stuff. Also, do you want to have a particular focus? You know, who do you want to reach? So I'm going to start working again with children. I'd like to do quite a bit for men's mental health. Recently, I've been supporting a friend through their mental health struggle. I work with a lot of, the film is predominantly men. So it's been interesting to kind of see the societal barriers and the barriers to talking that men are faced with, you know, and I would like to start taming Olivia towards that. But for a long time, I was looking at new mums. So you can focus on dad's mental health, young people and children, like Max was just talking about. I mean, that's incredible. You can focus on the queer community. It's been Pride this week, and some of the advocacy coming out has been absolutely incredible. There might be a comorbid condition that you have, and you want to talk about what it's like having OCD and something else. So have a think about what it is that you want to talk about. Have a think about who it is you want to reach. Is there a particularly marginalised group of people within the OCD community that you would like to work on? I think the first time that I ever spoke to Stuart Ralph for his podcast, we said the importance of really having your area and just hammering, because then if you all have your areas, you can just hammer within that, and it's just like you keep shouting about your thing, and then all together you raise the profile of OCD across the board as a team. And I just think that's a really lovely way of thinking about it. So yeah, that's just a little picture of me and William there. Do you know what? I love looking at this picture sometimes because I think, oh my goodness, I'm postpartum. Look at that makeup, look at that marvellous hair. I miss it. 99% of me thinks, oh my goodness, I was so poorly in that picture. So I basically, that was my 32nd birthday. William was 2 months old, and I was critically ill and should have been in hospital in that picture. And that is what I advocate for. That is why I do what I do, to stop women like me feeling like I did in that picture, and to stop men and children and anyone else feeling like I did in that picture. And also for the children who are growing up with that condition and with parents with it who are not getting the help that they so desperately need. So they, on that screen there, are two people who I work hard for, and I could put my husband and friends and family and everyone else on there, but that is the picture that I look at because I know how poorly I was in it. So have a think about your motivation. You know, who is it? What is it? So how are you going to share your story? What skills do you have already, and what kind of skills would you like to develop? You know, I mean, there are some amazing people out there. Are you going to do written or art-based stuff? Are you going to just talk? It's often much easier to talk than it is to write. Writing can take ages. Do you want to do a mixture of everything? You know, I mean, we've got people like Laura from OCD Doodles doing her drawing. We've got John doing his woodwork, absolutely incredible. Dan Furlong runs ultra marathons and tells people about OCD while he's doing it. He tells people about his story as he stops off at different villages. You know, so advocacy doesn't have to be about you doing something that you don't feel natural doing, you know, or at the same time, it could be something brand new. I didn't know that I would enjoy writing. It was just a desperate need to get it out of my head that started taming Olivia, you know, so you'll be surprised at the different things you can try. Also, would you like to work alone? Would you like maybe to do something with your spouse or with your family, and then you can talk about your condition, and also other people can talk about the way it affects them or how they can support you. There's been some excellent podcasts and posts about, and there are excellent books out about working with a family within OCD. Maybe that's something you could do. Maybe work with your friends. And Not Alone Notes in the States is two really good mates who set up a charity together where they send notes of hope out to people who are really struggling. And I think that's wonderful because you then get to share the workload, and you've always got someone that you can talk to about it and about what's going on. How public are you willing to be? And who will be in the audience? So I've started this because this is a massive question, okay, and it's one that needs to be thought about and discussed beforehand. You can always build up to who you're going to share your story with. You cannot take that stuff down. I have been dealing with the press now for 4 to 5 years. I am really hardcore when it comes to dealing with them. I will always work alongside OCD Action. They have to be willing to work alongside OCD Action. If it's just me they want to talk to, then it's not happening. They have to give me copy edit, which means that before they put it out, they publish it, I have to okay everything within it. So basically people can publish my story, but I am completely in control in what is written about me and what goes out there. And there's a whole post on my website, I think I've linked to it at the end under further reading as well, for you to talk about that. But absolutely do not talk to the media or the press. They shouldn't be contacting you through your inbox. If they are and you fancy doing it, get in touch with OCD Action. Okay, so we really need to make sure that we are not sharing our stories in places we're uncomfortable with, or sharing too much. How much do you want to talk about? You know, I didn't talk about intrusive thoughts of harm for a year. I then didn't talk about intrusive urges for another year. So really think about what you want to, you know, kind of say about your story. You can always add to it later, but you cannot take it away. There's currently a picture online, if you Google me, of me and Will, and I really can't stand it being there. It was a picture that it was just an error in emails, and it ended up getting printed and has kind of since done the rounds through other various dodgy news outlets. I've accepted it's on there now. It's fine. It's a, you know, it's a risk I take, even with all the steps I have in place. However, you know, you need to be really careful, because that feeling of not being able to remove things isn't nice. And also, how public are you going to be? Where are you going to go? Are you going to talk just inside the OCD community? Are you going to be anonymous? That's always an option. Are you just going to share your story in maybe the forums that are online, or through an advocate that you trust? And maybe just the mental health community, so that you're sharing with like-minded people. It's quite a jump to go from that to the public. So think about your life situation. You know, by that point, I had lost my parents. I've been open about OCD for ages. I knew I was prepared to talk to Will as he was growing up about my OCD and about the condition and what it did. So for me, I was happy to go all out. Think about you, the impact on you, the impact on your family. Finding your tribe. Okay, there's only another couple of pages left. I'm not actually sure if you can see me, and I kind of hope you're not, because my arm's going all over the place as I'm talking. Another couple of pages, and then I will do questions. So thank you for listening. I know this is a lot of talk without much interaction, because I can't actually see the Q&A section at the moment. So finding your tribe. Who do you trust? I mean, OCD Action are absolutely amazing, and they are my first port of call for anything. I will email them straight away. Who do you know will treat your story with respect? Who will talk to you about your options first? You know, if you're inspired by this, and I really hope you are, but talk to OCD Action afterwards. Talk to them about how you can do it well. And that is the same for advocates. You know, find your tribe. I've met some absolutely amazing people through advocacy. I absolutely love them. Brilliant, brilliant people who I would actually class as friends kind of in real life now. And so work out who has a similar message to you, whose outlook you like, you know, who treats people with respect, who's kind online, who listens, and then contact them maybe and talk about maybe sharing your story with them. So yes, same with people you've met through support groups or anywhere else, they might be able to help you. And this last one is particularly important. And it's the idea that you need to keep your stuff and your advocacy positive, I think. And if anyone has seen me on Twitter occasionally, they'll probably think, yeah, hypocrite. But I promise you, I am learning. When you are talking about OCD, it's really difficult not to call out and not to challenge. You know, OCD is very painful. And if you see people ridiculing it, it's very hard not to call them out publicly. In my experience, that does not work. People don't like being told what to do. They don't like being shamed, especially not publicly. So if that's the kind of advocacy, you know, really think about how to keep it positive, how to educate through a DM, or how to, you know, if you find yourself caught up with a group of people who are particularly negative or who are well known for shaming and calling out, you know, just come back a little bit from that, you know, because you've got to look after your well-being. You come first. You always come first. So I think this is the last couple. Yeah, here we go. So, and this is really, really important. I'm just going to have a little sip of water. It's getting quite parched. I mean, this tiny study or office area, whatever you want to call it, with windows shut, and it is boiling. Right, so the importance of boundaries. They are so important, okay? They are for you, and they are for the people who will be accessing your story or any advocacy you might choose to do. We are all busy. We are all dealing with OCD. We are all going through some form of recovery. We've all just been through a pandemic. Think about how much time and attention you are able to give your advocacy, because if you choose to share your story, that could be it. It could be done then, and that's absolutely brilliant. You've shared your story, it's out there. However you've chosen to do it, brilliant. But think you probably will hear from people afterwards. You know, you'll get kind of cuddled into the community, because that's what it's like. You know, we are a really good bunch. And just think about how much time and energy you can give that, and where it's going to come from. You know, a lot of us are knackered by the evening, and we're fit for nothing other than, you know, an hour in front of the television. Where is this time going to come from? Is something going to give? Because you need to look after yourself, and the other things that you do for self-care are more important. It's important to share your story. It is more important to look after you. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got was, don't set yourself on fire to keep others warm, because it's so tempting. It's so tempting. If you know other people are hurting and they're in pain, or they're struggling, or they need help, it is so tempting to just empty yourself, and you can't help anyone then, including yourself, and you need to look after you. And also things like, you know, staying flexible. You might say, right, you know what, I'm going to post on a Tuesday, or I'm going to share bits of my story, you know, on a weekly basis. That can change. It doesn't have to stay that way. Just because you've set something in motion, it doesn't mean it always needs to stay. It's about changing as you go along. And again, here, if I can just very, very quickly show you, this is the old artwork that was done through watercolour with paints, etc. Would have taken hours. This one we have now adapted, because we had to look at the impact advocacy was having on our family life. Is now computer generated. Pete draws onto the computer with it, and it is saving us hours. So even though I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years, I'm still adjusting. I've talked about who you should share with and who. Right, you need to really make it clear that you're not a therapist. You know, we have to use signposting. We mustn't do therapy. We mustn't give advice on CBT or ERP. You know, it is not safe. It's not our place. We are not experts. So just make sure that you know the message you want to be sending out that's going to help people, and stick to it. Again, and I cannot say this enough, look after yourself. Really look after yourself. There have been times when I've run myself into the ground with advocacy. Again, you know, I'm guilty of some of the things I'm saying not to do now, and it's how I've learned it along the way. You know your signs of relapse, know your signs of overwhelm. If things change, you suddenly have a busier week, don't feel bad about saying, do you know what, I'm going to reschedule this for another time, okay? And also think about your availability. What is your availability? Will you be checking messages in bed at 11:30 at night? Because those read notifications will show, and you'll feel very guilty not replying, okay? So maybe say, only on these days, on these hours, am I available? And again, I know it's all about feeling passionate and feeling inspired and wanting to change the world. We can't do any of those things if we flatten ourselves in the first month, you know, so slowly, we need to play the game slowly. And, oh, another old Olivia, that is, I think, the original. Now, for other people, we need to make sure that we are putting the correct information out there. You know, I know everyone is doing advocacy with the best will in the world, but every now and again, I do see incorrect information given out, and that is a problem. You know, if you're going to share your story, make sure that it has the correct information in it. Make sure you know what OCD is. Make sure you know how to be able to explain it. I mean, that's brilliant for your own recovery anyway. You know, get your work checked. Anything that's big that I've ever done has been checked. The thing that I did for the British Midwifery Journal was checked by Fiona Challicum, who is the kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, patron of maternal OCD. So I don't tend to write anything that lots of people are going to see without getting it fact checked first. There again, don't do therapy, protect others. Signpost always. I'm sorry, I can't answer that. I'm not a professional, but could help you out with that. OCD Action or any other favourite professional or therapist that and also you don't have to write all these out individually. You can have automated responses, and it is a way of looking after you, protecting your boundaries, and it's much better at protecting other people to make sure you're signposting rather than attempt to help someone if you're not sure. Last couple of points is think about how you present yourself. In an ideal world, we would all be wandering around happily singing our stories, not. But if you are kind and polite and you show integrity, that makes a massive difference. I constantly try to remember how I felt when I was really very, very poorly, and the impact that had on my, that if anyone had contacted me out of the blue and I had been met with someone, impatient or clearly a bit fed up, or someone who clearly didn't really know what was going on, those words would have really hurt. So think about how poorly you were and how best to respond. And also set good boundaries for yourself in order to be a role model. If you do decide to take up a lot more advocacy, think about how much you're online. Think about the kind of messages that your words aren't saying, but your kind of online behaviour are. People are seeing what you're writing. So it's just really important to try and, I don't know, I suppose give off a good not a good impression, but try and show people how to look after themselves by showing that you very clearly look after you, and that is being really clear of your boundaries. So further reading. There's the last couple of, these are a couple of blogs that I wrote. So there's a lot more information on how to deal with the media. Please, 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 please never talk to the media without reading that blog or talking to OCD Action. That is so important. And also, So You Want to Be a Stigma Busting Advocate is another blog on my page that talks about how to do that. I believe it's on the OCD Action website as well. Just to talk a little bit more about some of the things I've been talking about today. Okay, I think, this is a little preview of my next post that's coming up. It's a little bit sarcastic about having warm baths, but in a nice way, because it's about being positive. Right, okay, I am done. I'm just going to shut this. I'm going to come back to okay, am I back in? Yes, I think you are. Okay, right, I'm just going to do a few little questions. Please let me know if you have any more questions, because I think I've probably got about what looks like, 13 minutes to answer them. So I've got a question here that says, thank you, Catherine. Do you have go-to phrases for saying no to people? If they ask you to do something that you're not comfortable with, could you give me some examples of how you say no? Ooh, that is a great question. Okay, let me have a look. Have I answered that properly? So, right. Here we go. Is that? There we go. Right. So, that is a really good question. And that is the sort of thing that I would possibly have thought about before and have a standard answer for. Because sometimes, I'm a bit of a people pleaser and I want to make sure that I say yes to stuff when I can't. And so rather than stuttering around in person, I would probably have practiced something beforehand. I would say that it wasn't the right time for me, or that I had to prioritise my time, or I had a lot on at the moment and could they come back to me later. I do try, it depends on whether I actually want to do it, whether it's the right time or not. I do tend to signpost again. So I find quite a lot of the press kind of get in touch and ask me to do things for them. And even if it's not the right time for me, I will ask them to talk to OCD Action, because then maybe another advocate would like to do it. And the added advantage then is that they get to work with OCD Action, who will support them. Yeah, I think you're very entitled to kind of just say it's not the right time for me. I don't want to do that right now. I'm really sorry. I hope you understand. But it is difficult. So sometimes you just have to force those words out, I think. I also say I've got too much on. I've got used to it. I had to practice it, but I'll just say, you know, I've got too much on and I can't do that. But thank you so much for asking me. I really appreciate it. Why don't you try, you know, the charity and see if they could recommend someone. So it's just that, really. It's just kind of being polite and just being quite, you know, no. Right, okay, I hope that answered your question. Right, here we go. So I've done that one. Am I managing here? Yes. So thank you. There's another question here. So I teach in a sixth form college and feel really strongly about raising awareness amongst young people and staff, having had OCD from about 15 but not knowing until my late 20s. I want to make my students aware of mental health conditions beyond the umbrella of anxiety. I'm not sure where to start or how to go about it, as my position as a teacher can make discussion of my own mental health difficult. Do you have any advice on where to start? Yeah, absolutely. And I do know what you mean about that, because I keep thinking about going back to some of the schools that I've taught in to do the same thing. I think you absolutely do not need to use you as an example of it. You could go off and have a confidential conversation with someone within your school and say either you or someone you know has OCD and you would like to have someone come in to educate about it. I know OCD Action goes into schools and talks to people about OCD. I know I think they've got some awesome PowerPoints last time I looked anyway to help teach you about it. So you can be the one that organises it without even having to say that you have OCD. I'm sure they could organise people to go in and talk to them about it. I wouldn't be beyond maybe finding some online resources. And, you know, either you be the one that kind of shows them, depending on your role within school, whether you would find yourself, you know, naturally kind of teaching that, or ask the teachers to in a staff meeting. But I agree. I think it's really, really important. And even if you just look at something like PSHE, my son was recently talked to about how it's the meaning of your thoughts, you know, that your thoughts don't actually have a lot of meaning some of the time, and you shouldn't believe everything you think. And I thought, blimey, he's 8. If I was taught that then, my life may have been very different, you know. So sometimes it also doesn't need to be the hardcore OCD stuff that actually helps people deal with OCD. But I would look around for resources. Maybe they could listen to an OCD Stories podcast. They are amazing. Maybe you could print off some resources and get them to read it. Ask OCD Action as well, because I think I saw a lesson plan on their website. So maybe someone else could teach them and you can work through that without ever having to do it yourself. So have a look about and ask OCD Action. I think they'd probably be really good at being able to help you there. I hope that answers that question. Let's have a look here. Right, okay, so what's your favourite memory so far from your advocacy work? Oh my goodness, that is a question. Oh man, there are so many. I'm going to have to dig back a little bit. I think one of my absolute favourites was I went through an absolutely ridiculous time a couple of years ago where I was with OCD Action actually, and we went on, oh no, first of all, I was nominated by my wonderful friends for the NHS Who Cares Wins Awards under Mental Health Hero. And I got to go to this ridiculously posh dinner at the News Tower in Waterloo. I was terrified the whole way through. I don't know how I got my dinner down. And it was lovely. I mean, there were some absolutely amazing people there. I couldn't quite believe the room that I was sharing with some people. It was amazing. But what came from that was the people that hadn't won, and I was a runner-up as well. Chris Evans from Virgin Radio kind of said, right, well, look, I'm going to donate some money to all the people who came runner-up because they also do really cool work as well. I mean, Olivia Bamber, who used to work for OCD Action, got to go to the News Tower again to spend the morning with Chris Evans, and we spoke on it was like some kind of car festival that he did. And so some people were off doing certain things. You had people walking around on top of these massive ostriches and people sitting on hay bales playing banjos. And it was like, you know, 20, 30 floors up. And it was just the most insane experience of my life. There were dancers, go-go girls all around the place. And then we kind of calmed down, went and sat down and spoke to Chris a little bit. And then we went off, had a little bit of food, had a drink, had a nice chat. I do love Olivia Bamber, and love my Olivia too. And then we were sitting down exhausted at the end, and we started chatting to another DJ whose name I've forgotten, but we realised afterwards was actually very famous, and neither of us had noticed. And then we realised that because we were in West, I think Talk Sports are, we were actually sitting next door to the Real World Cup, and we hadn't even noticed it. It was like literally as close to me as, you know, kind of my arm is here. And it was just like, oh my goodness, that is actually the Real World Cup. And, you know, should we nick it? And it was just absolutely wonderful. You know, it was just, I couldn't quite believe that me sitting down and writing my first story about, you know, OCD and Olivia and all of that pain could lead to something quite so amazing. I think that was probably it. Right, thank you for that question. Actually, that was cool. I had a chance to have a little think about everything then. Right, okay, so please let me know. We've got about 4 minutes left, I think, if there are any more questions, and I will try my best to answer them for you. There's a load more stuff on my blog if I've forgotten anything. And as always, just talk to OCD Action, because they will have really good ideas. And also, you know what, you don't, in terms of helping people with OCD, you absolutely don't need to share your story if you're not comfortable with it. There are loads of other ways you can support the OCD community, and OCD Action will have loads of ideas about how you can go about that, whether it's volunteering for them, helping on phone lines, or just helping out in any other way. So, you know, if you're you've listened to some of this, James, and maybe I'm not quite ready, you can still help people with OCD in loads and loads of other ways. So please check those out. And I think I am pretty much done. If there aren't any other questions,